I'm going to open this interview with the quote from the press release from Minister David Parker, the Minister for the Environment, just to set the scene going into our next guest to clarify this. He said, "We are fulfilling the government's promise to stop the degradation of our waterways and make measurable improvements within 5 years and return them to health in a generation." Minister David Parker and Minister Damien O'Connor decided to drop by the Ophir Hall in Central Otago to discuss dropping $500,000 on the table on a catchment that when I read, I had a drop the mic moment, because I thought, hang on a minute, this area we're talking about has certainly not been one that needs to be made an exemplar. So I picked up the phone to Andrew Paterson, who joins us now, and will clarify this. Andrew, the words "stop the degradation of our waterways" in reference to your local catchment of the Manuhira, is this fair?
No, I don't believe it is. The reports and all of the state of the environment that they refer to all goes back to 2011. It's 9 years ago, and there's been significant changes within our catchment, and we have a lot of upgrading of irrigation infrastructure, so the likes of centre pivots instead of flood irrigation and border dike, and all of those are actually helping to improve the water quality. Now, if you look at the Otago Regional Council's actual testing of the river and the Manuhira and the Thompsons Creek, the water quality on nearly all of the scales is improving. So E. coli has dropped drastically, and the dissolved reactive phosphate or rock phosphate, DRP, is actually reducing as well. The only one that's making a slight increase is Triple N.
I'd like to understand the next part about make measurable improvements within 5 years. What have they outlined when you attended that meeting at the Ophir Hall of what those measurements and KPIs will be?
Well, this is the ironic thing. The government, the minister was actually asked to help with funding of the testing. So I proposed that there hasn't been enough testing done on the whole catchment, right? So it's very ad hoc, and it's been really only done in a couple of spots. So one is the Thompsons Creek, where it enters the river. One is below that, which is actually below the Amakau wastewater output, and the other one is at the bottom of the river. Now, there is many parts to that river. It is actually a very large catchment, and there is a lot of area that could be done. That there could be areas of testing. Now, when I said that, Minister Parker and we had the regional council chairman there, Andrew Noon, as well, and he said that, would the government help with this? And Parker said, the government doesn't want to be funding the ORC's obligations. Now, it's a little bit ironic that he says that, considering the obligations and the interest he has in the catchment. You'd think he'd want to test to make sure that what he was saying is correct. What I think is going on is he knows it's already improving, and that potentially from 2011 to when they do actually do a whole raft of tests on the river, so they do another state of environment report, they'll actually see an improvement. And he'll take the claim for that, take the benefit for that. My wife actually said to me tonight, Andrew, you have to be positive. You have to say some positive things. And to be positive, him and Damien O'Connor actually are offering $500,000 to the Thompsons catchment, which is going to help to create a wetland area and help with some fencing and some riparian planting at the bottom, so that we have a filter system which allows the Thompsons to improve. Now, the Thompsons is actually one of the red flag creeks in Otago, and it's the only one in Central Otago. And it has had a poor record, but it has been improving, and dare I say it has been because of dairying. So dairying has had the money to put the irrigation infrastructure in, so spray irrigation pivots, the like, which put the water on at a low rate, and therefore you don't have the runoff, so you don't have the essentially the stuff that causes the high E. coli levels, so the shit or manure, I should say, being a bit more polite. That is being flushed into the river, and also that you don't have the sediment runoff as well. So you're actually reducing the DRP. And because of that, we've seen an improvement. So since 2017, in the crucial periods between November through to March, the figures have drastically reduced. So they were, and back in the 2005 when ORC started testing the Thompsons, they were actually testing levels during the summer there of 8,000 and 9,000 for E. coli. Now they don't go that far anymore. The scale doesn't go that high. So that shows, they've been testing it for a long time. In 2013, with the advent of increased dairying in the area, we saw a reduction to the 1,500s. And since then, now it's sitting in the below the 1,000 level. So yes, it's not at where it should be, but it is improving. It has been improving quite drastically.
And of course, this was in conjunction with the Central Otago communities. What responsibility is the Otago Regional Council and the Central Otago District Council doing in terms of local town infrastructure as well, and what that could contribute to those waterways?
Yes, so the Omakea wastewater, so 3 years ago before the last election, I had actually done some testing and identified, because it wasn't talked about, it wasn't known. In fact, it was widely disbelieved that a town could actually have their wastewater go directly into a river, okay? And so I did some testing then, and I took it to a few meetings of some environmentalists, and they were shocked. And what kind of transpired from that, and I know that the local council was planning to do some work, and they had in the budget about $240,000. So what they did is they actually have nearly spent $1 million. So they found that it had a hole in the wall, right? So every time they had a flood, it flushed it. It had never been emptied, and it also was not lined. So there was seepage into the outside area. So if you take that into account, going from 3 years ago in the previous election, we may have already seen an improvement just from that. But at the moment, they've also added some other infrastructure in there. So what they've done is they've actually started to aerate it. The only downside to that is potentially that's going to increase the nitrogen output from it. So which will has potential to influence the algae in the river. So in fairness, Central Otago District Council has actually pulled their socks up. Tim Cadogan and the council, the staff there, are very proactive on it. He's been a big supporter of the farmers, and he's actually tested the water in the river himself, so he knows what it's like. And he has actually defended us on numerous occasions, saying that, well, we talk a lot about emotion, but where's the actual evidence? And here we have the evidence, and it is not like you say it is. We have a Fish and Game report just recently that said how badly degraded it was, yet they couldn't refer to any testing, and they've never done a single test themselves. Now, I tested the Manihurikea, the wastewater. I tested it above the wastewater, the Thompsons, and the Manihurikea at the Galloway Bridge. Now, all the tests except for the wastewater came back excellent. It's literally drinkable now. If you had a cast-iron stomach, you would drink, or you were thirsty. I reframed it. You should, if you were thirsty, you could drink out of the Manihurikea at the moment.
So therefore, what sort of irony is it of taking $500,000 off the government because it has been parked there, and yet the primary sector being heavily involved in the economic recovery to pay this government debt back?
Well, that's the issue we've got. He's giving $500,000 to do a job that I believe that through our catchment group, the farmers were going to tidy up anyway. We probably wouldn't have had the money to be able to buy the land to be able to build the wetlands. So that's certainly a positive at the bottom, and that's going to help filter anything that's coming out of it. But we had already identified the issues in the areas that needed to be changed. So I will thank the government for that funding to be able to build that wetland. But we were already working on it, and as I said, we'd already improved things. We still have a wee way to go, but we are certainly making a difference and certainly making improvements.
Andrew, the easiest and quickest question and answer I have to close. What's your favourite AMP show?
Central Otago, which is the Omacare one, and of course it's very well run by a whole lot of women actually, and they do an amazing job of it. Very well run, and it has been growing and going from strength to strength every year. My wife is involved in it, and Andrew Paterson is the chairwoman of it, and yeah, it's a fantastic show. Really strong in the sheep and wool, and just a really good day out.
Absolutely. A lot of those ribbons go out to people with the last name Paterson, and among others. Of course, it's fantastic. I love the Central Otago AMP show.
This is Sarah's Country.